Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Innovation Café. Welcome everybody who's watching online as well. For those who haven't been here before, we are a weekly networking event where we always have presentations on the fields of tech, knowledge and design. Tonight we have Team HART here talking about human augmentation. And afterwards we can have drinks at the bar as well to carry on talking about it. We'll provide the snacks and you can get the drinks. Well, I'll wish you lots of fun with this presentation. Over to you.
Thank you. Okay. So we are Team HART, and my name is Sjoerd, and I'm studying computer science. And this is Ben. And this is Tess. Okay. I don't think the clicker is working. No, it is. And the next slide as well.
If you need another mic, then you can...
Yeah. I'm afraid the clicker is not working. I did it once.
Oh, we don't have that many slides.
No?
I'll go to the back for you then.
Yeah, that would be good.
It's working now.
Oh, it is working now.
I saw something changing over.
Oh, that's something else. No, I don't think it's working. Okay. Oh well. Technology. Well, I'll start by giving the word to Ben. Right? You're starting. Yeah.
Will you click it for us then? Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so we're part of Team HART, and we're a student team at the TUE. Team HART stands for Human Augmentation Research and Technology. And basically what it means is that we do research and we develop new technologies in the field of human augmentation. And what human augmentation means, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it, of the field of human augmentation. I will get into that during the presentation. So human augmentation focuses on the 5 senses you have. So currently most people have 5 senses. So that's touch, smelling, seeing, taste and hearing. I always get it mixed up. And human augmentation focuses on improving those senses, working with those senses, and maybe even adding new senses. So these 5 senses were given to us through evolution, and we had no say in picking what we want to experience in the world. So for example, I can only see a small part of the light spectrum. You can only see the visible light spectrum. And there's so much more out there which we want to experience, or we might want to experience, but we cannot. Next slide. Yeah, so this is pretty vague and pretty hard to comprehend, but this field of study started quite some time ago. In 1991 there was a study at the TUE by a professor who looked into deaf people that lost their sense of hearing later in life, and they implemented, or they put a vibrational motor to the index finger of one of the deaf people, and after less than an hour of training, the deaf person could sense that they were hearing. So the way you're experiencing sound right now, they couldn't understand it because it's too much information, but they could still, they could say they felt it. So there was a weird sensation for example, a deaf person that could then experience hearing. There you go.
Thank you. So we as Team HART do something similar, because what we do is we develop a sleeve, and in this sleeve there are 24 vibrational motors. And those motors can vibrate into patterns. So for example, you can feel a wave from your wrist to your upper arm, or you can feel it on your underarm buzzing 3 times. Those could be patterns. And every pattern can mean something, a certain type of information. And if you learn what those patterns mean, just like you learn a language, you can, at a certain point, feel it unconsciously. Just as you hearing me right now, you don't actively think about my words, but you understand me. And to this level, you can also, if you learn it well, feel this type of information. So our first proof of concept was language. Every pattern was translated to a phoneme, which is the sound of a word. And we had someone in the team learning those phonemes, and she's now able to understand them. So how we see the world and our experiences is that we're now in a limited reality. We have our 5 senses, and we want to expand those. with adding senses to our world. And in the end, we want to have a freedom of experience where you can choose what kind of senses you want to add. And to make this a bit more tangible, we're also, of course, not entirely sure how this will look like in the end. But how we see it now is that you have a product, you have the sleeve, and you can download the sense that you want for yourself. For example, if you want to learn how to have a 360-degree vision, then you can download it, learn it, and then you have that extra sense. But what are we doing in the team right now? We're developing this concept. So we work in several clusters, and we have clusters exploring new applications. So we now we have developed language, but we're also exploring non-verbal communication to add to that verbal language, and spatial awareness for maybe visually impaired people. We're also improving the sleeve, but also on the technical side and on the design side, so the materials, usability, the wearability. And this is also based on our user test with the sleeve we already have right now. And people are trying to learn those phonemes, and we see how they do it. And we have a cluster that is researching the pattern generation. So how we did it right now is that we manually created the patterns ourselves. But this cluster is using AI to generate patterns that are distinguishable.
Yep. So evolution brought us to this point where we are right now, and we have no clue how it looks like in the future. And these are the questions that basically drive every single person in our team. Questions like, what's the future of humanity? And especially, what role do we and what role does technology play in this? And I think we can definitely change a lot of stuff here. And there are a lot of really cool and really interesting breakthroughs still yet to happen in this field. And currently, we are really working on the frontier of this field of research. Well, that's Team HART in a nutshell. So it's really hard to convey this, the thing we do within 10 minutes or something, 5 minutes. So after this we'll have a discussion round. But first, are there any questions about the team, about what we do, about how it works, or is everything perfectly clear? It's also fine. How do you want
maybe a question to clarify a little bit. So you have this sleeve that works with senses because you use the vibrational, and it's kind of the goal, like also in the example that you, like when you have a hearing disability, that you can kind of replace the hearing disability by communicating through language, through the motor.
Yes, exactly.
So,
yeah.
And so you're replacing one sense which is disabled or which
Exactly,
is not good
in another place.
with another
Yes,
one.
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
But of course, you can also expand it. So, for example, you can hear very low tones or very high tones that you would otherwise no longer be able to hear.
But I think that's already happening with infrared cameras or vision and stuff like that.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you could even expand that to, so these are senses that we know, but there are, for example, there are birds that can feel electromagnetic fields. We can't feel that. You can place a meter on your sleeve and transmit that information to the sleeve so that you can start feeling electromagnetic fields. And if you actually know how to interpret the data you get from the sleeve, if you start really learning that, if you then subconsciously, you know what an electric field feels.
Yep. Maybe there are questions from, oh sorry, yeah, go ahead.
So why did you choose vibration? So why did you choose the actuator you are using? This.
Do you mean the physical,
yes.
The sense of vibration, or do you mean?
Yeah. Why did you choose that?
Because when we started off, this was a really vague concept, and it's really hard to show that you're working on something where you can't prove that it works. Our first plan was to give a proof of concept, and that was via the sleeve, because vibrations are really easy to work with. They also present very low dangers. For example, shocks could also work, but it's a bit harder to experiment with. Vision was really hard because you're working on such a tiny area, so that mostly left touch. And you can imagine touch being the most tangible sense to play around with.
And you tested this with people who had all senses available. I mean, there are more than 5.
Yeah. So they have 5 senses available, and or more.
There's 5 is only that's Aristotle. So medical science advanced since Aristotle.
In general, we mentioned the 5 senses, but you can, for example, also see your evenwichtsorgaan, the balance. That's also one. But
I think 12 or 20.
Yeah, but so that person experimented with the sleeve. They were taught the language of translation of vibrations, and in that sense they could they could learn language through touch.
And do you plan to use this for people who are limited with some senses, or there are also some people who have a crosstalk between senses? I don't know the English word. There are these people who see colors when they hear sounds. Do you,
synesthesia, yes.
Do you plan to expand into this realm, or?
For now, we're mostly planning on substituting senses because that is the easiest thing to do, and we're only with a team of students that we don't get that much funding and we don't get that much time to work on it. But this is definitely one of the plans in the future if we start growing or start doing some really interesting stuff.
There's so many possibilities.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else? Yes.
So first of all, my compliments for your slides. I haven't seen for a long time that simple slides telling a story.
Thank you.
I've looked to the other ones, it's always crowded. I was a bit stunned about the slides, so very good. So my question is, you had the sleeve, but with braille, you also, that people are sensitive in the fingers. So again, why did you went to the sleeve? It's large, it's huge. Why not just stay at braille?
Maybe I can answer this one. So I'm currently working on generating the patterns that are playing on the sleeve, and the reason that you wouldn't use braille is because it's letter for letter, so that's already quite a bit slower, and on top of that you would require an addition to your finger because you already know how to read braille with your finger, and that would mean that you cannot use that finger for anything else because you would be wearing it all the time. You could use a finger cap, but still you would have to put that away and it might break. While wearing the sleeve means that it's constantly on you. You can always have it on, and you don't have to take it off at any point. Can I add this? Yes, sure.
Yeah, if we use, for example, a doctor, if they would use this sleeve, they can work and do surgery with that sleeve on without having to read with braille. So this is also something that is seamless in your life, and you can do other activities while wearing the sleeve.
Did you choose it just for convenience, or because this part of the skin is sensitive?
So for example, on your back, you have a bit of different senses, and it's harder to distinguish between left and right, for example. And there is done research that this part of your body is actually the most sensitive to those vibrations.
Yeah, and the size of your actuators, that is also derived from some.
Yeah, we actually had those actuators you saw. Those are quite big. We're currently making that smaller. But then you have also the balance between not making them too small and not making them too big. But we are now working with smaller actuators.
So there's actually been research done on defining if you're being touched at 2 points or at 1 without looking. And the distance between that is our measure of where you're most sensitive. And your arm has a very short distance where you can still distinguish between different points. And then the size of the actuator doesn't matter much. It's just the power. So you have to be able to feel it, of course. But then it's only the distance between them, which is why the sleeve is quite big. You can't use like a 2 by 5 centimeter area because that would not be wide enough.
And they are just on and off, so they vibrate. How they vibrate, whatever.
There's frequency and there's amplitude, and we can all vary those. So there's a very large range what we can do with them. And we're now also working on dynamic patterns. So they're moving across the skin instead of just playing an image, for example. Like that, like an image would be a good reference.
So is it just amplitude and frequency, or also phase between?
Very good one. So what we did a while ago was define what a pattern means for us, because that's basically the start of how you start using patterns. And we found that there are 5 variables actually fully defining a pattern. One is you have amplitude and frequency of the vibrations, but you could also, for example, see on longer time scales, so every second it turns on and off. It could be a sine wave, so increase in frequency or turn it off. So that's a group frequency basically. Yeah, and you could also, instead of sending a sine wave to the actuators, you could also send a sawtooth, so it goes on, slowly off, or the other way around. That's also a variable, and they all play into this very wide range of basically things we can pick out from. And we also, in research, it has been noticed that patterns that move, so patterns that feel like they're moving, for example, instead of a pattern that has 3 times like a short vibration, a pattern that moves from the back to the front and the back, they are way more easily rememberable. So that's what we also take into account when deciding what patterns we want to play.
And what is the frequency range? And there's maybe the question, so maybe the signal itself is not so interesting, but the frequency at which you can modulate?
Currently we're using a frequency of about 70, so what we used to work with was either 60 or 300, but we found out that the difference in frequencies, like that's the ground frequency.
Yeah.
That difference, that didn't matter that much. It's mostly moving the patterns around. And we use a modulation of 8 Hertz, which is quite a lot, but you can distinguish it quite clearly from the base frequency.
Interesting. So you have 24 points, 8 Hertz.
Yeah.
So roughly 24 times 4 gives you...
Yeah, we have
the number of, if you want to translate it to bits, how much information you can convey with that.
In bits is way more, because we have those 5 variables and we have locations, but we also have combinations, so you can do, it's not that one amplifier is playing one thing, it's that a group of amplifiers is playing a lot of things and it can be moving. So we once calculated it and it was...
Would we be able to train it then? There's a possibility to generate it, but are we able to get it?
Yes, so what we're currently doing is developing we started developing what these patterns meant and how to define them, and now we're working on creating an algorithm to have people decide how different two patterns are, and via that, because you can't go over the entire space of all possibilities, and via that find the most distinguishable patterns. So basically from the entire set of patterns you say, I want to pick the 24 most distinguishable, and that algorithm gives it, or 36. Yeah.
So there's 44 phonemes, which is what we encode. And what we are currently doing is setting up a test with external people that will use our sleeve to then give a distinguishability score between 2 patterns over and over. And then we're going to feed that data to an AI, and that AI will then be able to tell us how distinguishable 2 patterns are. And then we can start feeding that AI a lot of patterns, comparing them, and then seeing how we can maximize that distinguishability. So you can make 2 patterns that are very close to each other, and a computer will be able to say, well, these are different because there's just like 1 hertz more, but a human wouldn't be able to detect that. So that's what the AI will be able to do. Yeah.
Do you see? Oh, so sorry.
And if you're finished with this, what would be your next sensor?
Ooh, well, there's a big difference in the team. Everybody wants to do something else that's cool, and there are many ideas. But personally, I feel like I would be most invested in looking into combining our sleeve with an EEG, so in a brain wave measuring device, to allow very basic telepathy. So you could think to someone else, yes and no, maybe even very short, small messages. That's what I would personally be.
And then the other one?
Yeah, I am personally interested in the design aspect and the wearability, because a lot of technologies work really well, but then you have a huge battery next to you. So I'm really interested in making that really seamless and just wearable.
I'm going to go back to my roots and enjoy the idea of helping firefighters or being a firefighter. I would love to see this being used, for example, to look through walls and see heat. However, there is a very big ethical aspect on this, which makes it quite hard to do, but that's one of the points that we'll go over in the discussion, like the ethics on this, because it can be quite tricky, but that would be very cool. I also really like the EEG because it's just the idea of being able to think with someone is mind-boggling.
Yeah. Do you see any hysteresis effects? So does it play a role in which order you play the signals or patterns? So is the second one differently interpreted after, you know, a certain precursor?
There's two things that play into this. So first we assign patterns to each phoneme, and then playing them in order like normal language is usually best because people already think in normal language and normal sentences. But we have found that over time your skin becomes a little bit less sensitive. So for example, after 15 minutes, you would want to take a break to let your skin recharge, let's say.
Interesting.
But the order in which the patterns play, it doesn't matter much. Unless you have like one vibration motor which is on all the time, then that spot will become less sensitive more quickly than the rest. Yeah. Okay. Then we can move on to the discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe you can go to the next slide. So we're going to do a discussion. There's just going to be the top opportunity for you to react like we just did as well to some questions that I'll post. And online people can also interact if they want. And there will also be the opportunity to raise your own questions you would like to discuss. Try to keep it a bit in the topic. Yeah, let's get started. First question. No? Can you go to the next slide? Sorry. Yeah. So the first question, what applications would you like to see the sleeve used for? So besides what we're currently doing, which is sort of nonverbal communication and language, do you have an interesting, crazy idea? Please speak into the microphones. Yeah.
Maybe this one can stay beyond.
Yeah. If I'm driving a car, I look ahead of me. That maybe during driving, if something happens in the back, that gets sensed by. That could be for me an application. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Nice.
So I'm personally fascinated by my phone, which has a fake button. Yeah. So it's actually not a button, but when you press it, you think when it's on, you think you're pressing a button, and that's just done with vibration.
Okay.
So I wonder whether this technology can be used for augmented and virtual reality to give the, you know, this force feedback or an illusion of kind of force feedback or touch. Huh?
Yeah.
This is actually a really cool point because one of the things we also do with this team is try to spread awareness, and one of the ways we do this is by going to Technasium schools. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's okay, I won't explain it then. Do you know it, what it is, Technasium? Oh, it's a special direction in high school where students focus more on technology and they do projects towards companies, towards teams, or that kind of stuff. We also mentor a lot of kids there. And one of the final projects of a group of 4 kids was that they combined this sleeve with virtual reality to create an environment where you get used to spiders, so your fear of spiders. So what they did was they looked at virtual reality, and in the first phase you just have a spider walking around you, and later on it actually starts touching you, and you create that haptic feedback with your with our sleeve. So yes, it is a very, very cool way of working with it.
And I guess the obvious application is music. When you go to lower frequencies, you then couple them by your sensor. Yes. That might be cheaper than a bass speaker.
You'd only be feeling bass on the. That would be fun.
It can be very simple. It can be very complex or out there. It doesn't matter.
No.
You have nice applications, maybe.
We have enough points to go through.
Yeah, but you were like no language, but maybe something like indeed like braille reader or we have enough. A braille reader or indeed like I think the phoneme is really interesting, but I'm also curious if it can translate to actual hearing, at least in the people speaking range, because that's smaller, but then you would also gain a lot of insight. And I'm also really curious how that would work if you can couple that with location of your arm and then the audio feedback you get over there, so it actually translates to position in a sense.
So translating position of your arm to, or?
No, that so if you have the step of hearing in a sense, I'm curious if it would also translate if you know where the sound is coming from, if you can translate it to actually feeling where the sound is coming from, based on either the position of your hands or the position of your ears.
Yeah, so that's really cool, because language isn't only phonemes, it isn't only sound, it's also direction, but stuff, things that we're not struggling with. It's a real challenge for us, namely emotion or intonation, because writing down, you can write down commas and points, but if someone speaks, it's a lot more emotional. There is a lot more message behind the way people speak instead of what they're speaking, and that's hard to convey via just writing stuff down. Or
for example, poetry. If you want to, you know, say like a haiku, then there's rhyme and rhythm and speed of speech, and that doesn't translate to the sleeve currently, but that is something that is of course important for when you're actually really interacting.
Yeah. So in my head, it's like how much data can you convey, and then instead of the phoneme system, you can go to actual audio, and then it's richer. But then, of course, it's.
You have two arms, right? So you can do one with the
Yeah.
and the other one with the direction. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, what I also find. Oh, sorry, do you want to move on?
Yeah, that's last one.
Yeah, the last one. Yeah, sorry. Did you think about using it during sleep to influence sleeping patterns or improve sleeping patterns? Or?
We have a team member now is in the field of this research, but then not within HART, so he doesn't do anything with the sleeve, but he does something with indeed manipulating dreams. So this could also be really great indeed.
going to bed at night and choosing what you want to dream beforehand, turning on the sleeve, and half an hour later it starts vibrating. It would be very interesting.
Yeah, what I also find really interesting is those everyday life tasks you don't really think about, but could be much more efficient. Like, I don't know how many times you look at a planning at a day, but if you could seamlessly feel your planning, for example, this could also maybe save you a lot of time during a regular day.
Okay. Oh. So for the next question. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Oh, no, we can actually move. We can do this one. That's fine. So we, of course, considered dangers that our technology introduces into the world, because, of course, it's new. It influences people's behavior, and especially one danger that we're considering. Well, you can explain that, Ben.
So every new technology brings a lot of new dangers with it. And for example, we see for this one that privacy and data security is really important. Imagine talking to someone and hearing them through the sleeve. But if it's not secure, you can't trust on what the sleeve tells you. If someone's speaking to me, I know that for a fact you're saying that. But if someone hacks my sleeve and they tell me something different than what is actually being said, that could be very, very dangerous. And also just manipulating people, manipulating their behavior or what they think they know. So do you think there are any other dangers out there that, because we're working on this for a year already, for 1.5 years. We got tunnel vision. That's how it works. We only think about the things we know. So.
Yeah. Addiction, did you think about addiction? Could people get addicted to it?
I wouldn't say more addiction than a smartphone, but that's still a lot of addiction at some point.
Yeah, but then comes the question, is it bad to be addicted to feeling more, to hearing more, to experiencing more?
It depends, yeah.
if it influences your normal daily life, your productiveness, then I would say it's not a great thing. But I think that this can actually enhance your experience and enhance your effectivity in your day-to-day life. So I would personally become addicted very fast because it actually enhances my productivity. Yeah, that's fine. No problem. You'll get the.
So of course there are immediate concerns like if you wear something electric or with batteries, that's is it flammable or not? But I think the privacy and data security thing is hard to talk about right now because it depends on the system, right? So I feel you're still in the exploratory phase. So I'm like, just explore, and then, you know, of course, you need to think about these things, but it's hard to implement it beforehand if the system isn't complete because you don't know all the entry points that people can have into your system, and that's something you need to design. But
yeah, well, obviously we have the main controller, so like whatever is recording, and then you also have the Bluetooth connection to the sleeve, which could also be interrupted. And we currently don't use any encryption or anything like that because it's just simpler to make progress if you don't have to worry about those things. But that is something that if we would release this to the market, we would actually have to do that because, well, like we said, the dangers are huge.
yes, yes,
if that goes wrong.
Encryption is definitely the first step.
For sure. Yeah.
Going to step first, sorry.
Okay, at first, I think I would better call it challenges or something instead of dangers. It's really, but maybe that's up to you. And also want to go on with the addiction, because you said if you're augmented, you can maybe be more effective or efficient during the day with the work or the life you have. But it's kind of the smartphone thing. If you wouldn't have it with you for a whole day, it would feel like very
Empty.
Strange, empty or whatever. So wouldn't it happen the same with this sleeve?
Yeah, I think it would. I think you would feel like you're actually missing some input throughout the day. If it broke down in the morning and you didn't wear it all day, then yeah, that would feel weird. So yeah, it is something that you would get so used to that it would be a miss. You would miss it when it's
like
gone.
The smartphone and
exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it's the same with a lot of other things like your car or your bike. So yeah.
Yeah, how I also see it is if you would use it for a certain profession, then you also need certain objects to do your profession. So maybe that's just an object you use to do a task, and that's then just needed. So in that way, maybe you're not addicted, but you just use that object because you need it.
In some way, that's also a little bit, I think, I have to be careful here, how the smartphone started as a business tool and to a plan, and now it's kind of course, in the beginning it was also kind of consumer tool, but now it's more a consumer tool to watch videos, listen to music, and besides that, you can check your email or have your calendar, agenda, and stuff like that.
True, so. But should you hinder innovation because it might pose dangers?
No,
I think
it's
no.
No, that's not my point. But yeah,
I'm also addicted to my glasses, but I think the
yeah, but it's also kind of an augmenting.
Yeah, the glasses are augmenting people.
Yeah,
they're making me see better.
Yeah, indeed.
So,
yeah.
No, the telepathy, what you said, there are quite a lot of dangers there, I think, no? Because now your thoughts are still your own. But, for instance, the interrogators, the re-education camps and so on, then...
They already do this with a lie detector. So I think
this is lie detector 10.0.
It's very, very dangerous.
But,
currently, there are not that many dangers. If you use a EEG, like a commercially available one, it can determine what you're looking at on a screen roughly. So if you're looking at a screen, it can determine if you're looking at the top or the bottom or the left or the right. You can't read thoughts yet. I think that at some point in our future that will be possible, but that's still very far ahead. So I think this will be worked out before we can actually start implementing that. but some really basic functions, for example, feelings can be determined. That would be very cool to know how a different person feels. That's one of the options.
The company I would like to work at later on in life is Neuralink, and it's Elon Musk's company that is making a brain implant that takes EEGs to the next step, which is inside the brain, except from just the outside. And yes, that is exactly where that is heading, and that is very scary.
Because now it's also going to be tweeted what you think.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. Okay, I think we can move on to the next one. Yeah. So innovation. Should this field be stimulated? Should we put more effort into this? Because it's, you know, well, of course. Well, if everybody agrees, then there's no discussion, right? Okay, then let's move on to the next one. That's fine. Next one is, I think, for open discussion. So if there's anything you would like to talk about, then now's your chance. Yeah. That one is easier, actually. This one is a bit short on the wire.
It's also a risk. So when you introduce yourself, you are all technical people, more or less.
Yeah.
And this is about body, human. So maybe the team is not complete. Maybe a person that can do that part of the job.
We're almost. Well, we're starting to recruit new people, and I personally have invited someone from BMT, so biomedical technology. That's still technology, but it already gets closer.
Yeah, but it is about sensing. Does your skin deteriorate? Or I have no clue. I'm just.
Yeah, that's actually something we're really researching right now because that's very important. So we aren't discarding influences on your body with long-term use and only advancing technology.
We have a neuroscientist on the team. He's not that active, but because
who's not active.
No, he's limited in his time. But yeah, it is hard because we are indeed at a technical university and our team is based there. But we are looking from people outside of the university, especially indeed because of this reason.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Well, there are a couple more slides if we have more discussion, but I don't know how we're looking on time.
Yeah, we are a little bit over time. We've got like 10 more minutes through for the absolute max. I was also wondering, what scale do you want to distribute this in?
Right now, we really don't know because we only exist for a year. This also really depends per person. I'm personally, I think it's nice if we stay in the non-commercial area for a while because then we can have all the freedom we want. We can explore everything before having to deal with everything that comes with commercializing it. So yeah, in my opinion, we'll see.
But not commercializing doesn't mean that we're not useful. It might sound weird, but currently we're working, or at least we're working towards publishing a paper on the pattern generation, which is basically following up on a paper from 2019, and we're already way ahead of what has been done or is going on in the world currently. There are not that many people looking into this. I would only say that there are roughly 10 or 20 really high-level professors looking at this, so this is something that we actually contribute in the academic world.
Right. Okay. I'll get the next slide. I'll give this back to you.
If there are no other discussion points, we have 2 more left, but
and you can of course raise one while we're just discussing. That's fine as well. So the next one is humanity. So this is just external, adding something that you can wear, wearable. Elon Musk is trying to put metal in our brains. When are we not human anymore? When are you a machine?
So we all know the paradox of the ship, that if you start changing out planks, it doesn't become its own ship anymore. Sort of the same applies, but here you're not only switching out body parts, but also functions. If you change somebody's heart out with, for example, a pig heart, which is already happening, they're still human. At least I find that doubtably. But if you are changing out someone's brain and someone's heart and someone's heart and someone's limbs, at what point do they become a RoboCop, or at what point are they not actually human, conform the norms anymore? And I didn't consider this technology dehumanizing. Well, for the sleeve, certainly not. But if you start implanting stuff, for example, to change behaviors, or if you start changing out senses, for example, if you change out your hearing for a better hearing, at what point it's hard. We don't have an.
All your senses, and everything goes to the machine.
Google is already dehumanizing us, and Facebook is already dehumanizing us if you look in that way.
But we still stay human ourselves. Like if you go to a room by yourself, you're still a human. We don't know the answer to this ourselves, by the way. We're not philosophy students. We don't hope to get it.
But I think to answer this question, you first have to find out what being human or humanity is actually. And I think we need a little bit more beers or wines to come to this conclusion, and a lot of more time, I think. But and I think that's the most difficult question that isn't on the slide yet. But yeah. So, and I think that's a question that goes on since the first philosophers came to life. So, yeah.
I think because we know that this technology in the long term can change a lot of stuff, and one of the concerns that we all have is that, or in the team, that we can see people thinking they can be better with technology, and for example, cutting off their arm and putting a bionic arm on there. That's already something that's probably going to happen in the next 10 years, because robot arms are getting better than human ones. At what point do you want to allow this? At what point do you think this is... This is an open discussion, so we're not looking for the answer. It's more of a sparring, yeah.
I think also we all came to this Innovation Café, a fan of innovation, and I think our boundary is also much higher. And there are already people really scared of what Elon Musk is doing and consider that as really dehumanizing. So I always try to put this also in the perspective of people having no interest in technology whatsoever, maybe a bit more religious people. So maybe their boundary is a lot lower.
We're still all technical students.
Yeah.
Xavier had a question first. Sorry.
Yeah, if you ask 100 people, you're going to get 100 different answers. You know, go to the Amish and ask them this, then.
They don't even want the sleeve on.
Yeah, no. For the Muslims, I don't think they want a pig heart, and yeah, you're never going to get. This is
To add to that, I think even non-technical, like you call religious people, for example, or they even also use smartphones nowadays, or even glasses is also some kind of form of technology, if you look at that way. So I think, yeah, it spreads out to a complete whole society. Maybe except the Amish, I'm not sure that. But,
So I'm personally not very fond of this very narrow definition of technology. And if you look at the history of humanity, we have been foragers and we settled down. That was probably a far more profound change to go from foraging to, be farmers. And compared to that, that's a ridiculous small manipulation, yeah, and yeah, you're wearing glasses like I'm wearing glasses. If it would still be foraging, I would be dead. Huh? I couldn't do this. Huh? So humans have already changed quite a lot, and you can actually make the point that we already, we are not at our best anymore because we do not have to be these generalists like the foragers had to be. So it's good that you ask this question, but I would also say don't take yourself too important. It's
No.
We're just curious.
Small, it's a small mosaic stone, and Elon Musk is also not nearly as scary. That's.
I don't think that we're doing something important. We're doing something really cool that we all find interesting. I do think that this field, especially in this age of individualism, where people start considering themselves more important than society, so to say, I think is really important because people start to be able to choose what they want to experience. People 20 years, well, 100 years ago didn't get the choice, or they didn't maybe even think about there's light out there that I can't see, there's infrared light, I can't see that. And if this technology, so not what we're doing, but the technology as a whole really really grows, and at some point people get a say in what they experience. And what you experience is all that you are, basically, all that you experience, in a sense. All the information you get is by experiencing it. So fundamentally changing the way you experience things and the things you experience is, I think, a very big deal.
So if I look what media did to us during the past decades, that's an enormous change. And yeah, that's maybe a reason why indeed you should get linguists and anthropologists on your team. What I associate right now is some native tribes that didn't know certain colors. I think in Australia there's a tribe that doesn't have a word for orange, and so they didn't see orange.
Yeah.
So it is not new to mankind. Mankind has mastered that, and we will also master this change. And there will be a lot of failure involved and suffering, yeah. But that's normal. So don't be too scared, and just go ahead. And I mean, you are far more aware of issues than people were in the past. So
I think there's a fundamental difference between not knowing the word orange, but I get the idea what you're saying is that they still see orange, they just don't know the word for it. For example, well, yeah, okay, so the different example for this could be in yeah. In Russian, yeah, they're blue, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
This is very interesting, but
I'm afraid we're going to be cut off.
But I believe we're going to have dinner soon, so we'll still be there. We'll have plenty of time to discuss everything you want. And of course, you can also reach out to us and we can continue this discussion outside this area.
Yeah, it's a wonderful way to close off. Thank you very much for your presentation. Wait, we had some...
Two more questions.
I'll stop with, well, thank you as well for your presentation. You left us with some big questions. So, as you said, we will be having drinks at the bar first. We'll provide some snacks, and you're all welcome to have dinner at the meetup table afterwards as well. Next week we have Ayushman Talwar from Hable speaking about tablets and phones made for visually impaired people. It seems a little bit in line with what we're speaking about today. Check out our website for the most up-to-date program. A little side note about the 12th of May, there won't be an Innovation Café because we have the Kazerne Design Awards, and that isn't open for, you need an invitation for that. So that's why there's no Innovation Café, but you can watch it online. Thank you everyone who was watching online as well. And have a nice evening. See you next week.
And thank you all for participating in the discussion this openly.
Very nice. Okay.
Hey, you're still here. So you like the video. If you want, subscribe and click the bell.